The pack came for blood, but found their pups asleep on an Omega's chest, and the Alpha King relented. The forest was silent, but not peaceful. Shadows stretched like fingers across the undergrowth, and the trees swayed under a chill wind that carried whispers of the past. The moon, swollen and red, hung low above the canopy, bathing the forest in a light that seemed almost unnatural. Somewhere in the distance, an owl's cry split the air, sharp and lonely. At the edge of a clearing, the Alpha King waited. His coat was as dark as midnight, and his eyes shone like amber flames. He was tall, a mountain of a wolf among his pack, each muscle coiled and ready. The pack surrounded him, silent and tense, their breaths rising in small clouds that vanished into the night. This was no ordinary gathering. Tonight they had come for blood. Rumors had spread of betrayal of an Omega who dared to claim the pack's pups as her own. The Alpha King's teeth pressed against his lip as he looked toward the center of the clearing. There she was, the Omega. Small, fragile-looking, but her presence was magnetic. She sat on the damp earth, her arms wrapped around 3 sleeping pups. Their tiny chests rose and fell in perfect rhythm. Even the Alpha King, who had faced countless battles and bloodshed, felt an unfamiliar tug at his heart. The pack's growls rose softly, a warning and a question all at once, but the Omega did not flinch. She looked up, her eyes meeting the Alpha King's in a gaze so steady it made him pause. Her courage was like fire contained in porcelain, delicate, yet impossible to ignore. "Step forward," the Alpha King commanded. His voice rolled through the clearing like thunder over rocks. The pack shifted, each movement echoing the silent tension. One by one, they took positions, forming a circle around the Omega. There was no hesitation in their obedience. The Omega whispered something to the pups, her fingers brushing their tiny fur as if to shield them from even the faintest shadow. Then she spoke, her voice soft yet carrying through the cold night. "You will not take them," she said. The Alpha King's amber eyes narrowed. Her words were simple, almost childlike, but the tone carried a weight that surprised him. Every warrior in the clearing stopped for a heartbeat, as though the night itself had paused. "You do not belong here," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "You are alone, and you protect what is not yours." "I protect what needs protecting," she replied without fear. Her gaze never faltered. "These pups have done nothing to earn the wrath of your pack. You may come for me, but you will not harm them." A laugh, harsh and cold, escaped from the Alpha King, but it lacked conviction. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her and the pups. His claws dug into the earth as he leaned down, close enough that his breath brushed her face. The wind carried the scent of his strength, his authority, and something softer, something unexpected. The Omega did not move. She only held the pups closer, rocking them slightly as if to promise their safety. Her courage was maddening. The Alpha King had never encountered anyone like her. Most would have fled, cowered, begged for mercy. Yet here she was, standing against him with nothing but faith and defiance. "Why do you not fear me?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper, lost to the wind. "I fear the wrong things," she said. "I fear the world turning on those who cannot fight for themselves. I fear the innocent being taken by the strong. But I do not fear you because you may be strong, but strength without heart is nothing." Her words struck him like a blade. The forest seemed to fall silent again, the pack holding their collective breath. Even he did not respond immediately. He had spent decades building his power, mastering fear, commanding loyalty. No one had spoken to him like this in all his years. The pup stirred, small limbs stretching and yawning. One opened its eyes and blinked up at her, then nestled back against her chest. The Alpha King's gaze softened, but he did not show it. Not yet. "Step aside," he said finally, "or the pack will make you." "I will not," she replied. "They are mine to protect, and if you are truly the Alpha King, you will understand mercy before I am forced to beg for it." The wind picked up suddenly, rustling the leaves in a rush of whispers. Somewhere deep in the forest, Wolves howled, answering a call that had begun long before either of them were born. It was as if the forest itself was watching this confrontation, judging. The Alpha King paused, his instincts screaming at him to strike to end the challenge. But he could not. The innocence of the pups, the strength of the Omega, and the courage she radiated, it unsettled him. More than that, it made him reconsider everything he believed about power and control. He took a step back, the first in many years where he had hesitated in front of an adversary. The pack shifted uneasily behind him. There was confusion, anger, anticipation. But the Alpha King's decision was made, though even he did not fully understand it. "Very well," he said at last, his voice firm yet carrying an edge of something else. "They will not be harmed, not tonight." The Omega's eyes widened, and the smallest of the pups stirred against her chest. Relief washed over her, though she did not relax entirely. Trust was earned in a world like theirs, and even a gesture of mercy carried uncertainty. "You are wise," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper meant only for him. "And yet do not mistake this for weakness." The Alpha King's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. He wanted to say something, but the words failed him. Instead, he watched as the Omega adjusted the pups in her arms, her courage shining brighter than the blood-red moon above. The pack, still tense, slowly backed away into the shadows of the trees. They left the clearing silent, leaving only the Alpha King and the Omega with the sleeping pups. For a moment, it seemed that the forest itself held its breath again, waiting for the next move, the next challenge, the next test of strength and heart. The Omega looked up at him, her gaze steady and unwavering. "I will protect them," she said, "even from you if I must." The Alpha King felt a strange heat in his chest, a mixture of admiration and caution. No one had ever dared to speak this way to him. And yet, there was a pull, subtle but undeniable, drawing him closer to the possibility of something he had long abandoned: trust. He stepped closer again, his shadow stretching over her and the pups, but this time he did not strike. Instead, he knelt slightly, acknowledging her strength. "Be careful," he murmured, a rare softness in his voice. "The world is not kind to the brave." She nodded, her arms tightening protectively around the pups. "Then let it not be kindness that saves us," she said. "Let it be courage." For a long moment neither moved. The wind whispered through the trees, the moon glowed above, and the forest seemed to watch in silence. And then, slowly, the Alpha King rose, turning his back on the clearing without a word. The pack followed, their steps heavy but obedient. The Omega remained seated, her pups safe on her chest, watching the shadows swallow the pack. She did not know if he would return. She did not know if the mercy shown tonight was temporary or permanent. But she knew one thing: she had faced the Alpha King and survived. And for now, that was enough. The forest settled into silence once more. The red moon drifted higher, and the night stretched endlessly, full of unseen dangers and whispered promises. Somewhere deep in the trees, a wolf howled, not in challenge, not in fear, but in acknowledgement of a bond formed in the shadow of a storm. And far beyond the clearing, the Alpha King watched from the edge of the forest, his thoughts tangled and heavy. He had come for blood. But he had found something else instead, something fragile, something fierce, something that might one day change him. And that thought was more dangerous than any weapon he had ever wielded. The fortress of the Alpha King rose from the cliffs like a shadow made of stone. Its walls were tall, cold, and unyielding, carved with the marks of battles long past. Torches flickered along the battlements, casting golden light that danced over banners embroidered with the Alpha King's sigil, a wolf with eyes like fire. Inside the grand hall, the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and iron. The walls echoed with whispers of loyalty, betrayal, and fear. The Omega had been brought here under guard, yet no chain touched her. Her arms still cradled the pups, and though her heart raced, she did not waver. The Alpha King walked ahead, his steps measured, his gaze piercing. Every move he made commanded the fortress to obey, yet the tension between them was electric. Neither spoke, but each wordless moment carried weight. The Omega felt it deep in her chest, the unspoken acknowledgement that she had survived what none dared to survive. Finally, he stopped at the center of the hall, turning to face her. The torches flared, throwing shadows across his strong features. His eyes, golden and intense, fixed on her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You are far from your forest," he said. His voice was low, deliberate. "And yet you have defied my pack. Why?" The Omega held her head high. She adjusted the pups, pressing them closer to her chest. "Because they are innocent," she said. "They have done nothing to earn fear or pain, and because someone must protect them when the world forgets how to care for the weak." A silence followed her words. The Alpha King's jaw tightened. He had heard courage before, but this was different. It was not born of arrogance nor of desperation. It was quiet, steadfast, and entirely unafraid. "You are bold," he said finally. "Boldness is dangerous in a world where strength rules. Boldness will get you hurt, or worse." "I would rather be hurt than silent," she replied. "And I will protect those pups even if it means standing against the Alpha King himself." The Alpha King's lips pressed into a thin line. He studied her, his mind racing. Most would have fallen at his command, trembling. Some would have begged for mercy, their hearts breaking with fear. But she held him in her gaze, steady and unbroken, as if daring him to find fault in her courage. He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the stone floor. The distance between them shrank, yet no threat passed his lips. "You are not afraid," he said. "And that unsettles me." "I do not fear you," she said, her voice unwavering. "I only fear what would happen if I let the innocent suffer while I stayed silent." For a moment, the Alpha King felt a strange stir within him, a mixture of admiration and something he had long buried. Compassion, perhaps, or curiosity. He had ruled through fear and strength alone for centuries, yet this Omega, she had awakened something in him he did not fully understand. "Very well," he said after a long pause. "You may stay for now. But this fortress is not a place for defiance. You will follow my rules." She inclined her head, careful not to show relief too quickly. "I will follow what is necessary. I only ask that you allow me to protect them in return." He studied her, noting the way she moved with purpose, the way she held the pups like they were precious treasures, the way her eyes reflected both fire and caution. Finally, he nodded once. "Then you shall have your chance. But know this, the world I rule is not kind. Every choice has a cost." The Omega's gaze softened, but only slightly. "I am aware. I have already paid for some of them." The Alpha King's curiosity sharpened. He had ruled for decades, and yet he sensed there were depths to this woman he could not easily read. Her bravery was not the kind born of recklessness, but of experience. She had survived loss. She had endured suffering. And she had chosen to protect life when destruction was far easier. Days passed in the fortress, each one stretching longer than the last. The Omega learned the routines of the place, the silent steps of guards, the careful balance of respect and fear among the pack, and the hidden dangers that lurked even within walls meant for protection. She moved quietly, tending to the pups, preparing meals, and observing the fortress with a keen mind. The Alpha King watched her from the shadows more often than he would admit. He was fascinated by her calm under pressure, her quiet courage, and the way she inspired loyalty without commanding it. The pack, too, began to notice the change. Their Alpha, who had once ruled through fear, now hesitated in ways no one could predict. One evening, the Omega approached him as he walked alone along the fortress battlements. The moon hung low, silver and haunting, casting a soft glow across the stone. "You do not sleep much," she said quietly, keeping her distance. "I have little reason to," he replied, his gaze fixed on the dark forest below. "The world outside these walls does not forgive weakness." "You are not weak," she said softly. "You are careful, and sometimes careful is the most powerful choice a ruler can make. He turned his eyes on her, studying her in the dim light. "You speak as though you understand the burdens of leadership," he said. "I understand responsibility," she said simply, "and I know what it is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is the closest I have come to understanding strength." For a long moment they stood in silence, the wind whispering around them. The Alpha King felt a pull toward her, a connection that defied logic and reason. She was an Omega, meant to be quiet, unassuming, secondary. And yet she commanded his attention, not with power or dominance, but with courage, wisdom, and heart. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," he said finally, his voice low and almost reluctant. "Most would beg for mercy. Most would cower. You do neither." "I do not beg," she said. "I do not cower, and I will not be silent when life depends on my voice." Her words struck a chord deep within him, one he had long tried to silence. He had been alone for centuries, ruling through fear and strength, trusting only in the loyalty of those who dared to challenge him. And yet here she was, fearless, unwavering, and unshakable. The Alpha King's gaze softened just slightly. "You are brave," he murmured. "Bravery is rare. So is mercy," she replied, glancing toward the sleeping pups nestled safely nearby. "And yet here you are, showing both." He did not answer immediately. His thoughts were tangled, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and the faintest hint of something dangerous: connection. The world outside the fortress had always been cruel, yet in her presence he felt the possibility of something different. Something he had long thought impossible. The next days were filled with quiet routines and unspoken tension. The Omega learned the fortress, the Alpha watched her, and a subtle bond began to form between them. She challenged him not with defiance but with honesty. He observed her not with judgment but with fascination. One evening, as the red moon rose again, the Alpha King found himself in the great hall, watching her with the pups in her arms. The smallest one yawned and stretched, pressing against her chest. Her hands moved with careful precision, adjusting blankets and murmuring softly. He could not look away. There was a calm in her movements, a life-affirming strength that contrasted with the violence he had always known. She had survived, and yet she nurtured life instead of taking it. It unsettled him, and yet it drew him closer. The Omega sensed his gaze and looked up. For a moment their eyes met, and something passed between them: understanding, recognition, and an unspoken question of what might come next. Suddenly, the distant cry of a wolf broke the silence, sharp and urgent. It reminded the Alpha King of the outside world, of dangers that still lurked beyond the fortress walls. He straightened, his instincts returning. "You will not be safe forever," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The world will test you, and soon." "I am ready," she said, her voice steady. "As long as I can protect them, I will face whatever comes." The Alpha King nodded, a shadow of a smile brushing his lips. "Then we shall see who is stronger, the strength of the pack or the courage of one who refuses to bow." The night stretched on, filled with quiet tension and unspoken questions. The fortress, once a place of fear and control, now felt different. It was a place where courage was measured not in battle but in choices, in protection, and in heart. As the Omega settled the pups to sleep once more, the Alpha King remained in the shadows, watching. The pull between them was undeniable, subtle but persistent. He had come to claim authority, to assert dominance, but instead he had found something unexpected: respect, fascination, and perhaps the first hint of trust. And as the red moon cast its glow across the fortress, he realized that the real challenge had only begun. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the walls, shadows stirred. The rival clans still plotted, danger still lurked, and the bond forming between the Alpha King and the Omega, fragile and untested, would soon be put to the ultimate test. The night held its breath. And in the heart of the fortress, two souls, so different, yet so alike, prepared, unknowingly, for what the dawn would bring. The first light of dawn barely touched the horizon when the distant howl shattered the fortress's uneasy calm. The Alpha King's amber eyes snapped open, sharp as blades. He had known this day would come. The rival clan, long lurking in shadows and whispers, had chosen their moment. The fortress was alive with movement within seconds. Warriors ran along the battlements, their boots echoing off the stone. The clatter of metal, the rush of orders, and the low growls of the Alpha's pack filled the air. The Omega, still holding the pups close, rose quickly from the great hall. "They are here," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "They will not wait long." The Alpha King moved beside her, his presence commanding, yet something different glimmered in his gaze. He was no longer merely a ruler imposing fear. He was a protector, a shield for those he had chosen to defend. "Take the pups to the inner chambers," he ordered. "No harm must come to them." The Omega hesitated, but his eyes told her there was no choice. She nodded and with careful steps led the pups through winding corridors, hidden passages, and reinforced doors until they were safely out of reach. Still, her heart pounded, sensing the danger creeping closer. The clash came quickly. Shadows swirled around the fortress walls as rival wolves lunged, their eyes gleaming with hunger for dominance. The Alpha King's pack met them with snarls, fangs bared, and strength that had been forged through centuries of survival. The battlefield outside the fortress gates became a dance of shadows and movement. Snow drifted in the air, soft and white, but tinged with danger. Wolves collided with wolves, their growls echoing like thunder over frozen rock. The Omega watched from the battlements, her heart torn between fear and awe. She had faced danger before, but never like this. The Alpha King moved through the fray with a precision that was both terrifying and magnificent. Each strike, each movement, carried authority and power, yet she noticed the hesitation in his eyes whenever a rival approached the inner walls where the pups might be. He was no longer just fighting for dominance, he was fighting for life, for innocence, for the fragile bond that had begun to grow between him and the Omega. Suddenly, a howl rose above the others, a strange, unnatural sound that chilled even the bravest pack members. A curse, long sealed within the Alpha King's lineage, flared to life. Shadows seemed to twist and bend around him, and a wave of darkness pressed against his chest. His fangs bared involuntarily, a growl ripping from him as the power surged uncontrollably. The Omega gasped. She knew nothing of the curse before tonight, only the stories whispered among packs and in forests where fear lingered like fog. But instinct drove her forward. She leapt from the battlement ledge with graceful speed, landing beside him even as rival wolves advanced. "You must focus," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Control it or you will destroy yourself." The Alpha King's amber eyes met hers, wide with the force of the curse and something else, trust. Somehow, against every instinct, he allowed her presence to steady him. Her hands brushed against his arm and he felt a grounding force in her touch. His muscles, rigid with power and fury, relaxed just enough for control to return. With a roar, he struck down the nearest rival, fangs glinting, claws tearing through shadows. The pack followed his lead, bolstered by his command and the strange hope that courage could be stronger than fear. The battle raged through the day. Snow fell heavier, muffling some sounds, yet sharpening others. The snap of a branch, the rush of paws, the low growl that warned of an unseen threat. The Omega moved as a shadow through the fray, her movements precise, guiding the pups from danger, using small diversions and hidden pathways to keep them safe. Hours passed like minutes, the battle stretching endlessly. The rival clan, though numerous, began to falter. The Alpha King's leadership, combined with the courage and cleverness of the Omega, gave his pack an unexpected advantage. Yet victory remained uncertain. At one moment the Alpha King found himself surrounded, the curse threatening to surge again. His body trembled with the force of it, and the Omega leapt forward, placing herself between him and his enemies. "You are not alone," she shouted, her voice steady, clear, and unwavering. "Together we are stronger." Her words, simple yet full of power, gave him the clarity to channel the curse. The darkness within him bent to focus, not on destruction, but on control. With a powerful roar, he broke through the circle of rival wolves, sending them scattering into the snow-laden forest. When the dust settled, the battlefield was quiet except for the heavy breathing of survivors. Wolves nursed scratches and bruises, some limping, some sitting silently, surveying the aftermath. The Omega knelt beside the Alpha King, who was still trembling slightly from the strain of controlling his power. "You controlled it," she said softly, "even with everything against you." "I had help," he admitted, his voice low. The moment felt fragile, suspended in the quiet aftermath of chaos. The two of them, so different yet tied together by courage, shared a rare understanding. The pups, sensing the end of danger, stirred in the Omega's arms. She pressed them close, whispering words of comfort. The Alpha King watched, a strange warmth growing in his chest, a feeling he had not allowed himself to feel in centuries. Pride, tempered with protection, and a curiosity for what this bond could become. But the calm was short-lived. From the shadows of the distant forest, a howl broke the fragile silence, a warning and a reminder. The rival clan was not defeated entirely. They would return, and the bond between the Alpha King and the Omega, though strengthened in battle, would be tested further. The Alpha King rose slowly, his golden eyes scanning the snow-streaked battlefield. His coat was dusted with frost, his body marked with scratches, yet his presence remained commanding, unwavering. The Omega rose beside him, still holding the pups, her eyes steady. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "Not many would have faced what you did today alone, with no one to rely on but courage and heart. And you," she said, meeting his gaze, "are not just a king. You are a protector, one who could have destroyed everything, yet chose mercy." He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing her for the first time. The bond between them, forged in the fire of battle, had shifted. Respect had grown into something heavier, something neither of them could name yet, but both felt. The sun began to rise, pale light spilling over the frost-covered trees and illuminating the fortress in a soft glow. Snowflakes glinted like diamonds, and for a moment the world seemed still, holding its breath. The Alpha King finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "The battle is over for now, but the war is far from done." "I know," she said, "but we have shown them what courage can do, and we will show them again if we must." He nodded, a shadow of a smile brushing his lips. "Yes, but remember this, strength alone is not enough. It is heart and trust and connection. These are the weapons that will carry us forward." The Omega looked down at the pups, sleeping peacefully against her chest, and felt a rare warmth spread through her. In the chaos of battle, in the clash of power and fury, life had survived. Courage had prevailed, and she realized, perhaps for the first time, that she was not entirely alone. The Alpha King stood beside her, silent but vigilant. Together, they surveyed the fortress and the forest beyond. Though danger still lurked, though the rival clan would return, and though the challenges ahead were unknown, they had forged a bond in the crucible of battle that could not easily be broken. A faint howl carried on the wind, a distant warning or perhaps a promise. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed, amber flames flickering in the dawn light. He had come to claim dominance, to rule through fear and power. Yet here, beside the Omega, he understood something new. Protection, courage, and trust could be just as powerful as any weapon. The forest around them seemed to hum with the quiet acknowledgement of that bond. The red moon of last night had faded, replaced by the pale glow of morning, yet the echoes of courage and defiance lingered in the air. The Omega tightened her arms around the pups, her gaze meeting his once more. "We have survived today," she said softly. "Together." Together, he repeated, his voice heavy with both promise and caution. But this is only the beginning. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the fortress walls, both of them knew that the challenges ahead would test everything: courage, loyalty, and the fragile bond that had begun to form. But for now, they had survived. And that was enough to carry them into the uncertain dawn. The fortress was quiet at first light. Snow melted slowly along the battlements, leaving trails of silver that sparkled in the pale sun. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and frost. The battle from yesterday had ended, but the echoes of struggle lingered in the walls, in the footprints of the pack, and in the silence that hung heavy over the forest. The Alpha King walked through the fortress halls, his coat dusted with frost, his golden eyes alert. The past battles had left marks on his body and on his mind, but he felt something he had not experienced in centuries: hope. The Omega moved beside him, cradling the pups who had slept through the worst of the chaos, their small forms soft and warm against her chest. "You move like a shadow," the Alpha King said, his voice low but tinged with admiration. "Even in the chaos you were calm, clever, brave." The Omega glanced up at him. Her eyes, tired but fierce, met his with a quiet honesty. "I do what I must to protect them, that is all." "You have seen enough to know it is true." "I have seen much," he said, "and I have learned that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, persistent, and unyielding, like you." They moved to the great hall where the pack gathered. Wolves of all sizes and ages circled, some limping, some sitting quietly, their eyes alert to the Alpha King's every movement. He raised his head, his voice echoing off the stone. "Yesterday we fought," he said. "We fought for survival, for honor, and for those who cannot defend themselves. And yet we have learned something more. Strength alone does not make a leader. Courage, heart, and trust do." The Omega adjusted the pups in her arms, keeping their small bodies close as they squirmed softly. Their innocence seemed to radiate warmth in the cold hall, reminding every wolf that life was worth fighting for. The Alpha King continued, "This fortress is ours. This pack is ours, but they are not ours through fear. They are ours because we protect them, because we guide them, because we earn their loyalty and respect. That is how we lead. That is how we survive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the pack. Wolves who had followed him out of fear now began to understand something new: that the bond between leader and pack could be stronger than any weapon, stronger than any battle. The Omega stepped forward, careful not to draw the Alpha King's ire. "And yet, even in victory," she said softly, "we must remember those who wait in the shadows, those who seek to undo what we have built. The rival clan is not gone. They will return." The Alpha King nodded. "Yes, and we will be ready, but we will face them as one. Not through fear, but through courage and unity." The next days were spent rebuilding and fortifying the fortress. The Omega moved among the pack, teaching the younger wolves how to move silently, how to protect the vulnerable, how to watch for danger without panic. The Alpha King observed her, noting her patience, her cleverness, and the quiet strength she radiated. At night, he found himself wandering the battlements, sometimes alone, sometimes with the Omega. They spoke little, but each word carried weight. They shared stories of loss and survival, of pain endured and lessons learned. The Alpha King found himself revealing things he had never told another soul: the loneliness of leadership, the burden of the curse, the fear that strength without heart would one day destroy everything he loved. "And yet," the Omega said one night, holding a pup in her arms, "you did not let the darkness consume you. You protected life, even when you could have destroyed it." The Alpha King's gaze softened, amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I did not know I could be anything else. Until you came. Until I saw how courage and heart could shape strength into something greater." Their bond, forged in fire and battle, deepened. It was not a bond of dominance or fear, but of respect and shared responsibility. Each recognized in the other a rare understanding: that protecting life was far more important than ruling through terror. Weeks passed. The fortress flourished under their care. The pack followed them willingly, inspired by their courage and the sense of justice they embodied. The Omega had become a symbol of hope, the protector of the innocent, while the Alpha King had grown into a leader tempered not just by strength, but by wisdom and compassion. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with gold and crimson, the Alpha King and the Omega stood together on the highest battlement. The pup slept peacefully at her feet, their small breaths even and calm. "They are safe," she said softly, her gaze sweeping over the forest and the fortress below. "For now." "Yes," he said, "and we will keep them safe, no matter the cost." A distant howl drifted on the wind, a reminder of the rival clans still hidden in the forest. Yet neither flinched. They had faced danger together, survived together, and their bond had made them stronger than ever. The Alpha King reached out, brushing a lock of hair from the Omega's face. "You have changed me," he said quietly. "I thought I ruled alone. That fear was the only tool I could trust. But now I see that courage, heart, and trust are more powerful than any weapon." The Omega met his gaze, her eyes steady, reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "And you have changed me," she replied. "I learned that even the strongest need trust, that protection is not just for the weak, and that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it." They stood together, silent for a moment, feeling the weight of all they had endured and the hope of all they could build. The pack gathered around them, a living testament to survival, unity, and the promise of a better future. The rival clan would come again, they always would, but the fortress was ready, and the pack was united. Strength tempered with heart, courage tempered with wisdom, and trust tempered with vigilance had created a force that could not easily be broken. Night fell fully, stars glittering across the sky like tiny sentinels. The red moon of the past battles had faded, replaced by a gentle silver glow that bathed the forest in serenity. The Alpha King and the Omega sat together, watching the pups sleep. "You were right," he said softly. "Mercy and courage, they are the strongest weapons we have." "And love," she said, almost as a whisper. "For those who cannot protect themselves, love is stronger than any fear or weapon." The Alpha King reached out, gently resting his hand on the small bundle of fur in her arms, then over hers, over the pups. "Then we will continue together," he said. "Not just as ruler and Omega, but as guardians, as protectors, as a pack." The Omega nodded, her heart steady. She had once feared the world, its darkness and its cruelty. Now she understood that courage, trust, and bond could shape a future stronger than any threat. And with him, she knew she was no longer alone. Outside, the forest whispered in the night wind, carrying the distant howls of wolves and the promise of life that would endure. The Alpha King and the Omega remained together, standing over the sleeping pups, knowing that the trials of the past had forged not just survival, but understanding, respect, and the unbreakable bond that had been tested in fire, strengthened in shadow, and now shone in the light of hope. The dawn would bring new challenges, and the rival clan would rise again as they always did. But for now, the fortress, the pack, and the Omega's small family slept safely. And in that moment the Alpha King finally understood. True power was not domination, nor fear, nor victory in battle. It was love, courage, and the strength to protect what truly mattered. He looked at the Omega and the pups once more, amber eyes reflecting the stars above. "We are ready," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." And the forest, the fortress, and the pack seemed to answer him in quiet agreement, a harmony of survival, trust, and the courage to face any darkness yet to come. For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King felt a calm he had never known. He had come for blood, for dominance, and perhaps revenge. Instead, he had found life, courage, and trust. And he knew deep in his heart that as long as they stood together, nothing, no darkness, no rival, no curse, could undo what they had built. The pups stirred slightly, a soft yawn escaping their tiny mouths. The Omega pressed them gently to her chest. The Alpha King placed his hand over hers, a silent vow passing between them. And in the pale light of dawn, with the forest stretching endlessly beyond the fortress walls, the Alpha King, the Omega, and their pack were ready for whatever came next. Together,